Hi, everyone. Patrick Zylka, Managing Director at College Solutions here. Today, I want to talk to you about noise, not noise in general, but the noise that seems to be in the ethos, omnipresent about college admissions, things that you're hearing from your friends, things that you're hearing from your neighbors, colleagues, things that you're hearing online, that you're reading on news sites or online forums, social media sites. There's a lot of information out there, some of it based on one person's experience, some based on more in-depth and meaty studies, some that has gone through the game of telephone, where one person has said something to someone else, to someone else, to someone else. By the time it gets to the end, it's nowhere near what it started as. But the noise that's out there for college admissions, this is a really typical time for it to really ramp up. We're in early to mid-January right now. Um, uh, just under a month ago, some decisions started to come out of very selective admissions offices for early decision applicants and early action applicants. We're about to get another big round now that we're after the first of the year. A lot of the larger publics will start releasing their early action decisions to applicants around the country. This is also the time of year when high school juniors who have maybe been a little less engaged in the process and the college search and research process are now really starting to pay attention. It's getting real for them. And so the noise just amplifies, right? What was a 7 is now at a 10 on the dial. Um, and this is very typical at this time of year. Um, in late December, there was an article published in New York Magazine titled "How Rich or Not Do You Have to Be to Get into the Ivy League?" And I want to say a little bit about this article, but my talk is actually not about this article. It's more about the noise and thinking a little bit more deeply. But I want to use this article as an example, because I actually saw it posted online from LinkedIn to Twitter to Facebook, um, by professional colleagues, but also just by people I know, friends who don't work in college admissions or really have a professional connection to the industry, but do have students who are approaching college application time or who are already in college, and so it's a little bit more in their system right now as a result. So I'll say a little bit about the article, but then I want to point some things out that are in the article as examples of things that I want you to think about, or things that a reader might not be thinking about, and then wrap it up with just some words of wisdom. So this article, how rich or not do you have to be to get into the Ivy League? It goes on to say that parents who have an income of roughly $158,000 to $222,000 a year, that their children have the worst odds of acceptance when they're applying to the 100 most selective colleges in the US. Um, you see an article title like this, and you start to read, oh my gosh, the worst odds based on this income level. It's meant to get a reaction out of you. And certainly when I read it, as someone who will eventually have a college age student, I started to panic a little bit. It grabbed my attention, and I wanted to read. And many of my friends who I saw post this article were sort of like, oh like there's no way my kid is getting into college now as a result of just seeing the headline without really reading the article itself. So if you do read the article, it actually starts out not talking about college, but about a family in Manhattan, in New York City, years ago, who were applying to a private kindergarten, and they completed the interview process. And the interview wraps up. The administrator had talked with the parents and with the potential kindergarten student, essentially saying, "We love talking with your family. Parents, you guys are great. Your child is great. But we actually know you don't make enough money annually for you to eventually give a large donation back to our private kindergarten. And therefore, I'm sorry, this conversation is over. We won't be offering admission. We wish you the best of luck." So it actually has nothing to do with college, but it is a really emotional hook. I mentioned eventually I'll have a son myself going off to college earlier. I have a son who's going to be starting kindergarten in the fall. So I read this story and immediately sort of started to panic myself. I could relate to this sort of conversation. We're in a different situation in my home, but I was really feeling for this family. The article then immediately makes a switch over to the college admissions talk, right? And that revealing the information that families in that income bracket, roughly $158,000 to $222,000 annually, are at a disadvantage in the admissions process. And the claim of the article, there are a couple. One is that families in that income level are likely to be gapped if offered admission. What's gapped? That means if offered admission, there's going to be a gap between what a family can pay for the cost of attendance at a private university. In this case, we're talking about mostly privates, and then the actual cost of attendance, that families in this income level are likely not going to qualify for very much financial aid, if any at all, and that they're not going to be able to pay the entire cost of attendance out of pocket. And so colleges know this and therefore just not going to offer admission in the first place. All right, so we'll get back to that piece in a moment. The article further, though, says that there's a large advantage for families wealthier, so income brackets above this level, for a couple of reasons. One is legacy admission, that wealthier families are more likely to have parents who have graduated from these more selective institutions, and legacy is taken into account, not at all colleges, but many, and that serves as an advantage for that income level above, and that families in those wealthier income brackets are also more likely to have their children at a very young age start playing less typical, less common sports as a way to hope for those students then being more likely to be recruited student athletes. The article then also mentions families under these income levels that, colleges, we can debate right or wrong, feel that it's their job to sort of change the financial situation of some families and the trajectory that they're on. So families under this level, colleges are more willing to admit they want to really change the story of that child and their prospects by giving them a world-class education. All right, so we'll talk about some of these things. Much of the data that is used for this article in New York Magazine actually comes from a study that was finalized in July 2023 by Opportunity Insights, which is a nonpartisan nonprofit organization at Harvard. So very credible organization, has fantastic data. The study itself is very long and in-depth. I encourage you to find the New York Magazine article and read it, and also this study. You can find both online. The study is much, much, much longer than the article, and there's therefore a lot of information in the study that's not actually in the article. The article, as a result, contributes to the noise that I started this conversation with. That though there is some good information in the article can't, just given its length, paint a full picture of the actual admissions landscape today, but also of the information contained in Opportunity Insight study that the article really draws a lot of this information from. Just as one example, the article doesn't indicate that the majority of colleges in the 100 most selective category that they mention throughout their article, most of them read applications need blind. Which means that as readers are going through an application at these institutions, the ones that are reading need blind, they have no idea if this individual is applying for financial aid or not. And if they are, how much financial aid they could potentially need in order to make the cost of attendance obtainable. So they don't have any understanding of how big a gap there's going to be. When I mentioned the gapping process earlier, they have no idea. And sure, absolutely, there are some assumptions that an institution can make based on the zip code that a family indicates in their application, or the high school that they attend, if it's a public or private, or what the income level at a particular school happens to be. A lot of that data is available. Colleges keep a lot of this data anyway in their admissions office, but some of it is just, you can find it online. Anyone can look it up and find it. I'd argue, though, that this data is really not used in the admissions process very much. Um, and in fact, when you read the Opportunity Insights full study, very long, it carve out some time. It's long, but it's a lot of really great information. When they break out the admission rates by income bracket, the average admit rates based on different income levels of families, the difference between the lowest admit rate and the highest admit rate at these 100 most selective institutions is only about 1.33 percentage points, right? And so this article that is meant to really cause some panic and, oh my gosh, we're at a huge disadvantage in the admissions process because of our income level, the difference is only about 1.33 percentage points. And that's really because there's so much different information that goes into a process that colleges refer to as shaping the class. All right, so what's shaping the class? I just use another catchphrase in college admissions and enrollment management. Shaping the class is the process at the very end of the admissions process in a college admissions office. So after all the admissions readers have read applications at an institution, almost always they are recommending more candidates for admission than a college could possibly admit, because otherwise they would over enroll in some cases by way too many students. They wouldn't be able to house them, let alone educate them. And so shaping the class comes at the end when some individual in a leadership position or a committee of leaders in the admissions office are going to really pour into that group of applicants who are being recommended for admission and make sure there's balance. They can really shape the class. They can make sure that there's balance between genders in the admitted pool, or balance in geographic representation, right? So that at the end of a admission, we've admitted applicants from all 50 states in the US and from 130 countries from around the world, right? These make great points that colleges can point towards. And so that sort of information goes into shaping the class. And so, sure, some assumed income level information or actual income level could be factored in when shaping the class, but it's one of many different factors. And I think that's really what leads to, when we're breaking apart this information by income level at 100 different institutions, that the difference between the highest and lowest admit rate is only 1.33 percentage points. It also doesn't point out, although I would hope many people would assume this to be the case, that when you're talking about the 100 most selective colleges in the US, that's a wide range of institutions. That's a wide range of how applications are reviewed and how a class might be shaped. And so, sure, the average might be 1.33 percentage points between the highest and lowest admit rates, but that's not going to be consistent from one school to the next, to the next, to the next. I joked with students that I work with that you might be applying to 12 colleges. You're going through 12 very different processes, and your approach to one college isn't going to be the same for that one, compared to the other 11. And same is true here. How a college is reviewing applications, what they're taking into account or not, is going to be vastly different. The article also doesn't point out whether this income bracket or all the income brackets have been adjusted for standard of living in different parts of the country. And so, the article starts with this family in Manhattan, New York, but cost of living in Manhattan in New York City is going to be drastically different than in Manhattan, Kansas. Right? And so one family could be reading this article and think, oh my gosh, I'm in this income bracket. My child is going to have the worst odds of everyone out there. But based on cost of living and where that individual and that family is actually living, maybe they aren't at a disadvantage. It's going to be substantially different. All right, so all of this is to say, right, that there's a lot of noise out there. This article really contributed to the noise. And it's really important to approach pieces of information, articles, what you're hearing from your friend or neighbor or whomever. You have to treat it and take it with a grain of salt. That you have to think very critically about what this information is telling you and actually what it's not telling you. You have to always think of that opposite information as well. And so if you see articles like this, if you hear from your friends, your family members, whomever, don't try not to panic. The college admissions process, no matter what, is a little at minimum a little bit stressful. You don't need to add to your stress level by reading an article that's really meant to draw a reaction out of you. It's always a good idea to talk with professionals in who deal with this sort of information on day in and day out. And so I would say don't hesitate to reach out to College Solutions about this or any other questions that you have, because I think we can really help you parse out the actual landscape of college admissions more than an article, a one-off article that you may read online or see a friend post. So contact us at College Solutions, info@collegesolutions.com. If you want to reach out to me directly, my email address is Patrick, Patrick, @collegesolutions.com. I'd be glad to talk with you. Anyone on our team would. All right. Thanks so much for listening. It was a great amount of fun to get to talk to you about this. This is something I care very much about. Have a good one.